Today on With the First Pick, we're doing a live first-round mock draft. But, Rick, we're joined by a very special guest, someone who will elevate the IQ of this podcast by at least 100 points. Color analyst for NFL games on CBS alongside our guy, Ian Eagle. And most recently, Rick, he was crushing it during NFL Network's Combine coverage. That's right. It's Charles Davis. Charles, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. You did say lower by 100 points, correct? All right. So.
Do you see Rick's shirt? There's no way this podcast can get any dumber between me and
listen,
Rick.
That's a good-looking shirt. That just tells you Rick's got it figured out. You and I need to join him.
Rick, do you have it figured out?
No, but I do know that he ties his tie much better than yours. I've never seen a guy go on air with a knit tie from 1982 that's like doesn't know how to tie a tie. So he reverted to a sweatshirt today. But I appreciate you bringing the class of this podcast up today, Charles. And
listen, I try my best. I hear my mom's voice in my head. You can never be overdressed, but you can always be underdressed, son. So let's go.
Charles, your mom and my dad would have been close friends. I'll tell you a quick story. My dad substitute taught my sixth grade class, and I was petrified. He came in dressed like Charles Davis. I was like, Dad, why'd you got to wear a suit? Because you never know. You never know.
That's how it goes down.
That is too funny. All right. I'm, of course, Ryan Wilson. That, of course, is Rick Spielman. Rick, I got the tote board back up. How many days until 2024 NFL draft?
Charles, we do this countdown. Do you know any famous NFL player that wore number 50?
Number 50?
Yeah.
Let's see. Butkus wore 51. 50. Singletary wore 50, didn't he?
I believe he did. That's a good one.
I believe Mike Singletary, Samurai Mike wore 50. That's a good starting point right there.
Yeah, so the only role I have in the show is the countdown to the draft. Other than that, I just sit in a corner, as you can see, and give opinions. But Charles, just so you know, we have 50 days until the 2024 NFL draft.
It is go time.
Fired up. I love that.
Rick, I'll tell you quickly. Debo doesn't like me reading through all the comments, but I can't not do it. And I was reading through the comments of our last show, and someone said, Rick can be a little prickly, especially towards Ryan, but he does have some good insights. So I think that's the best way to describe you.
Love it.
All right, let's get started, Rick. You know how this thing works. Debo's got the mock draft database generator machine ready to go. And, Rick, you are making the first pick. I'm guessing you're not going to complicate this.
No, and I brought Caleb Williams into my facility, even though he wanted to not do physicals at the combine, which absolutely irritates me to death. But that's a whole nother conversation. So this is a no-brainer for me, and I'm going to take Caleb Williams.
But you did like talking to him on the set last week, correct?
Loved him. Loved the ginger beer. You know, Charles, me and him have just like me and you share Hallmark.
Yes.
Yes, I love ginger beer, and we found out Caleb Williams loved ginger beer, so we had a little toast with ginger beer on the set deal.
Ginger beer?
I love that. I got turned on to ginger beer on a trip to Bermuda, and now I'm hooked.
Yeah. Jeez, Charles, we should live together. We like Hallmark movies, and we can drink ginger beer all night watching Hallmark
ginger
movies.
Pop a ginger beer and turn on the Saturday night feature. We're good.
Saturday night feature. So Oscar Madison is definitely Rick, and you're Felix Unger in that scenario, I think, Charles. That's some old people references for the young folks watching this thing.
Yeah, and Ryan, if you didn't know, last week was a whole day of Aurora Tea Garden mysteries.
So, Rick, hold off on that because Debo has some plans later in the show about you and Charles geeking out over Hallmark movies. So don't spoil it. So
all right.
Get your mind right on that. All right, Charles, you're up. You're the Washington Commanders. Rick has refused to talk about Washington after we kicked him off the show for 2 weeks during his stint with the Commanders to help them get their GM. So you get to make the pick for Rick and Adam Peters and Josh Harris here. What are you doing if you're Washington at number 2?
Well, obviously, we're going quarterback. I mean, how many years in a row have we had a different quarterback playing for Washington? How many different guys have played? It's a matter of which quarterback. And we know Drake May has kind of been the leader in the clubhouse nationally for a long time. But Jaden Daniels' season that he had, here's where I come down on it. Defensive coordinator, head coaches absolutely go bonkers when they have to deal with quarterbacks who have the mobility that Jaden Daniels has. I think Dan Quinn, when it all is said and done, will put as much influence on Adam Peters as possible. Adam has the final call, but his head coach, if he gets a vote, he'll want Jaden Daniels, quarterback LSU, because that mobility is what keeps defensive coordinators up at night. Not that Drake May doesn't have mobility, But Jaden Daniels, it's more like Lamar Jackson when he takes off and runs.
Rick?
Yeah, as long as he doesn't weigh 160 pounds, because he wouldn't get on the damn scale at the combine, which is another thing that irritates me. But I do recognize, as all of Charles' points, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, because it's hard to get people on this show that I actually agree with. But I have a feeling today, me and Charles will be on the same page on every pick that he makes.
Rick, I've been talking Jaden Daniels up for months now, and you've been
I don't pay attention to what you say.
Exactly, he does it. What do you think, Rick? What do you think about the point that Charles made in terms of defensive coordinators having concerns about having to slow down?
And the other point is that Cliff Kingsbury is their offensive coordinator. He's always had quarterbacks with mobility. Now, I think Drake May is has mobility to fit that offense as well. And the only irritating thing to me was Jaden Daniels. And if we do end up down at his pro day and he doesn't step on the scale, and Charles, I don't understand this, not to go off on a tangent. Yeah. Why are these kids hiding? Is it do you think it's more an influence of their representatives trying to take over the combine? Or who cares if he's 180, 190 pounds? Just step on the scale just to get it done, and you never have to weigh in the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I think that we kind of learned that lesson with Bryce Young last year, didn't we? Because if you know that's the major concern, you can find a way to get yourself in the neighborhood to get people off your back. Because didn't Bryce Young weigh in about 204 last year? And not one of us believed he really is 204.
Right.
But somehow he weighed in at 204, got a number, right? Like a good golfer, he posted a number and then called it a day. I would have thought that going into a Jaden Daniels in his camp, if you're worried about that number, you figure it out, you get that number, and now you don't have to deal with it anymore. Instead, we're still chasing you down. The opposite was last year, DeJuan Jones, who wouldn't get on a scale to Ohio State for his pro day because he was so huge. T'Vondre Sweat wouldn't get on the scale at the Senior Bowl. Remember that, guys? Because probably he's around 380 then. He got himself down to a svelte 366 for the combine and hopped on the scale.
Hey, Rick, I'm glad Charles brought up Bryce because he weighed 200 and change. Everyone, to Charles' point, knew that he didn't weigh that much. And then he just had to spend 6 weeks chugging water. Is that worth it too, though?
All I know is I checked the box. He was over 200 pounds, and I'm not asking any questions. I'm moving forward.
All right. So, Charles, you didn't take Drake May here.
Nope.
Was it close?
Yeah, of course it's close because when you see Drake May throw the football, of course it is close, no doubt about it. And Rick made the point. He's got excellent mobility. And run and shoot quarterbacks don't have to be super mobile, right? Air raid quarterbacks coming out, because I use that because Cliff Kingsbury is going to be the offense coordinator. He played in that offense. He wasn't mobile, but he put up big-time numbers. Jim Kelly, not the most mobile guy going, he destroyed the USFL with the Houston Gamblers in the run and shoot and the air raid type offense. So that part's not the issue, okay? And Drake May can move better than people give him credit for. I just think that Daniels is as close to Lamar Jackson coming out as Lamar Jackson was, and that really drives defensive coordinators batty.
And Rick will agree with you about that. He won't agree with me about that, but as long as he agrees with someone in the same general vicinity. By the way, Charles, our favorite run and shoot quarterback on the show, Maslin's own Rick Spielman coming out of high school.
Nice.
317 yards, but I didn't have much mobility.
Hey, just count to three and throw that bad boy.
Hey, Charles, do I look like Sam Hartman or not coming out of high school? You see me up in the corner?
Yeah, that's his hair in the corner.
Hey, that flow. Now, I just got to ask, did you feather it out in the back of the helmet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the way to roll. In my high school, it was a guy by the name of Mike Beck in the early 70s. And my high school coach, John Ford, was very much a high and tight guy. And my dad was his assistant. And he said, hey, we got to do next year when Mike Beck's our starting quarterback because Mike had the long hair. And once Coach Ford realized who Mike Beck was and the best athlete we had, the hair rule went out the window. Mike Beck had it feathered out of the helmet, and he was our starting quarterback.
That's the privilege of having a lot of hair. That's so I've heard. All right.
And talent.
Talent helps too. I don't know what Rick thinks is less impressive, my hair or my talent, but we'll talk about that later. All right. Patriots on the board. And Charles, I'll let you know on Monday I had to do a post-combine mock draft for the website, cbssports.com. And I got Rick fired up, even though he's a huge fan of this guy. So I got to figure out if I'm going to take him here or not. I went with J.J. McCarthy on Monday to the Patriots, still with Drake May on the board. And you see Rick there squeezing a squeeze ball. Rick, I'm going to keep it a little more sane for Rick Spielman purposes here. I'm just going to take Drake May. I'm not going to overthink it. Now, they could go in any number of directions. They have so many needs on this team because they're not very good. But what Rick said last year about the Houston Texans holds for the Patriots. You can't come out of this draft without a quarterback, I feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And thank you for not embarrassing me with Charles on the show today.
We got company over, Rick. I got to act on my best behavior, right? All right, Rick, you're up. Let's see if you can make another layup. The Caleb layup at number 1, number 4. The Cardinals are on the clock. Can you make a left-handed layup?
Yeah, no, this is a no-brainer, even though I'm really disappointed that he didn't come out and do the media stuff. And again, one of his non-compliant combine participants. But I do think this kid is Larry Fitzgerald plus coming out. I think it's perfect fit with the offense with Drew Petzing in Carolina or with the Arizona Cardinals. So I've got to take Marvin Harrison Jr. To me, I think he's a potential future Hall of Famer.
Hey, Charles, would you entertain trade offers? Because the team might want to come and get J.J. McCarthy, for example, and move down 3 or 4 or 5 spots, knowing that you can get Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze too, or you're sticking with Marvin?
Yeah, I would entertain that because I'm a team on the build, and I can add something to it. And look, what Dunze did at the Combine, because, Rick, you're talking about the guys who didn't do things. How about the guy who did everything and then some? Like, that's the kind of guy that you want. If there's a chance that you can get Roma Dunze instead of Marvin Harrison Jr., I think you would, and add to your team, I think you take that all day long. And by the way, Marvin Harrison Jr. not talking at the Combine, I just want to ask both of you, can you remember what Marvin Harrison Sr.'s voice sounded like? Because I never heard him talk either. So I feel like the leaf didn't fall far from the tree on that one. So I wasn't really absolutely shocked when he didn't go to the podium.
And the one thing I'll say, I got the chance to spend some time with him this fall.
Yeah.
And he was the most humble and almost introverted personality that I was with. It's almost like he didn't realize how good he was. That's how humble he was. And I don't know how comfortable, maybe like his dad, he is in front of the camera. So maybe that I could understand as well. But he's eventually, you're going to have to speak to the media at some point. So
yeah,
he'll
figure that out. He'll figure it out. And I will tell you guys this, talking to people at the Combine, as they say, getting it on background, so I don't say exactly where it came from. He called the Combine a month ahead of time because you remember he wasn't there for certain things, but he worked out a schedule with the Combine ahead of time to make sure he did all the height, weight, the measurements, all that other stuff, even though he didn't work out, because apparently he's in an internship. And he wanted to make sure he got back to that internship, but he didn't tell the world that. He just did it quietly. The flip side was, Rick and Ryan, Jaden Daniels on the flip side. Remember how they left and didn't get measured and all and what have you? The Combine wanted us to know that they were making the accommodations. They would move it up for him. They would have let him get tested, all those things. He chose not to. So two different things going on there, even though the appearance is one guy didn't go to the podium. Whoa, what the heck is that? He had done everything else the right way. The Combine people made sure I knew that. So
I wouldn't expect anything else from that family because it is a first-class family. And just my interactions with the kid, I did not get the impression that he was some kind of diva. He was as humble and quiet, but a great kid when you sit there and get an opportunity to chat with him.
And I said this last year. Rick and I were at the Ohio State Pro Day watching C.J. Stroud in addition to all the other young men that were drafted. But Marvin Harrison ran routes then, and Rick made me not talk about it on the podcast because we can't talk about Marvin until he's eligible. So we saw the Pro Day last year, even if he doesn't have one this year. And Rick, I think you can now at least admit that it was something to behold in person, Marvin Harrison running routes.
Yeah, everybody forgot Smith and Jigba and all the other, and C.J. throwing. Everybody had their eyes on Marvin Harrison Jr. and his routes and his hands, and it was a phenomenal workout.
All right, Charles, let's get juicy now. Things are starting to pick up here. The Chargers on the clock at 5. They have a new coach, a new GM, a franchise quarterback, and they could go any number of directions here. Wide receiver, tight end, offensive line. What are you doing for the Chargers, Charles?
Yeah, I've gone through all those permutations. I mean, you got your first crack at the top offensive tackle. Could it be Joe Alt from Notre Dame, right? Wide receiver, Roma Dunze sitting right there. And you got wide receivers who are aging and are coming off of injury. They don't have a tight end, though. I'm going to go crazy right here. Brock Bowers, tight end, Georgia. I'm giving him to Justin Herbert. They will find another tackle in the draft who can play the right side opposite Roshan Slater. I just think this kid is special. Just love what he can do, and I'm going to add him to Justin Herbert's arsenal.
All right, Rick, great the pick.
Yeah, no, that he is a unique playmaker at the position, just as long as you watch on the tape. But when he came on our stage, he was like underwhelming when you see him in person.
Wait, how was he over in terms of the way he talked or the way he looked?
No, he was a little quiet, but
Yeah,
just you would never guess what you see on tape because he doesn't look like a top flight athlete, like Adonis coming up on the stage. You know, he looks like a guy that would probably be on a podcast like this, except for Charles.
Right.
In fact, you know, I was noticing they almost started to have that comb over, but I don't care about all that stuff.
Yeah,
he can play ball.
Leave him alone with the hair. How about that? I got to defend him for his hair. Leave him alone. He can't help that, Rick. One thing I wanted to mention though about Brock Bowers here, they pick again at 37. So I'll look quickly here. So there's a chance for Jordan Morgan there at 37 if you're looking at the offensive line. Christian Jones, who had a great season for Texas. I don't know if Tyler Guyton gets to 37, but maybe he does. And then Patrick Paul. Those could be guys you sort of circle back to, Charles, if you're trying to solidify the right side while you get Brock Bowers up at the top.
Yeah, they've got it. To me, they've got to get a right tackle. I know they went with a bigger contract with Pipkins last year, but I didn't understand that when they made the deal to begin with. So to me, you've got to get that right side solidified for him, help him out. But as you noted, I think you can come back and get that 37 a lot easier than you can come back and get a Brock Bowers at 37.
Rick, let me flip the script. Would you take an Olu here or a Joe Alt here and then circle back at 37 and get your guy Ben Sinnott?
No, I just think that Brock Bowers is too good of a play. Charles, in your background there, I just want to go get a Mai Tai or maybe a Michelob Ultra on ice. Is your boy out there yet?
Both of you, I can't wait for you to come down and do the podcast from here. And then we'll do it that way. And I will dress appropriately, Rick.
Yeah. And then, can I stay in that West Wing over there? Is there a couple rooms over there?
Listen, both of you have spots anytime. I can't wait for you to come. But last thing I'll say, you guys had Brock Bowers on. I sat with him for radio. My impression is that Brock Bowers was enduring doing the radio and the TV. He's a nice young man, but he wanted to be anywhere but sitting there with us, talking about himself, talking about this. He was Cush and Jerry Maguire. I just want to play ball, man. I just want to play ball. And I admired him for it because that's just who he is. And he didn't try and fake it or anything. He was ill at ease, as we used to say, but not because he was being a jerk, because he was a good kid. He just didn't want to do it. That's not his thing.
And the one thing I will say about him, and we talked about it on the set, was that when you're that talented and know you're going to be the first tight end off the board and you went through that injury, some of those guys just shut it down. Yep. But he fought his way through that injury, and I don't know if he had the tightrope surgery on that high ankle sprain or not.
He did.
He came back and played, and that told me a lot about how important football is to him.
Yeah, tightrope surgery and came back to finish, and that's not something you get all the time, as you mentioned, Rick, with the top-rated guys.
Yeah, you're exactly right in terms of it felt like Brock was enduring the media part of it, and thankfully, Rick, producer Debo made us do a social media thing with him where I thought he was going to throw me out of the club, but I survived. Brock survived. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We got 5 picks in. When we come back, we'll speed it up here a little bit and going to start with the Giants right after this.
CBS celebrates Women's History Month.
All right, let's get here. Giants are on the clock. I got some things to work out here, Rick. For a moment, I considered J.J. McCarthy. I'm not going to go J.J. Offensive line feels like a layup, but I'm going to throw a curveball. And, Rick, you can go ahead and make your face before I even say it because you're going to make the face. Debo, I'm taking Malik Neighbors. They need help. He didn't even complain, Charles. Rick was okay with that one. You okay with that, Rick?
Yeah, even though he was another one that didn't participate at the combine. I would have taken the guy who the security people were very happy about because they got time and a half, except the guy who had to shut the lights off in the stadium when Roma Dunze was sitting there trying to break his 3-cone record
Yes.
150 times. So I would have went with either. I know Neighbors is more explosive, but I really love Roma Dunze, and I love him even more for the competitiveness he showed. And we talk about it all the time. That kid checked every box. He may not have been the fastest, but he checked every box at the combine with me. And I know if I'm going to go in a foxhole, I'm going to take him with me.
And Charles, you have Rome ranked ahead of Malik as well? Is that what it sounds like?
Yeah, I've got him just slightly. And by the way, if you talk with people at LSU, this is what fuels Malik Neighbors. He is one of those guys like, we always joke about Baker Mayfield and that chip on his shoulders of boulder. Sisyphus has no idea trying to move the one that Malik Neighbors has accumulated. Remember how he reacted with the Blitnikoff Award where he barely lost that one to Marvin Harrison Jr.? Angry, ticked off, more fuel. This is what he just keeps adding to his arsenal, but he's a heck of a player. And Adunze, my goodness, Rick was right. The guys there, this is like Herb Brooks in the thing. We're going to stay here. You can turn the lights off, but we're going to stay out here and skate. All right. And he was like, whatever you want to do, I'm still going to be here to do this thing. Really, really enjoyed watching how he went about his business. And to me, Rick, as a GM, I'm betting that if you're the GM in Arizona, you're having that conversation about, one, if someone offers us something, can we get out and maybe get Adunze instead? And two, do you like Adunze enough to move him ahead of Harrison? Based off what you said, the answer would be no. But based off of the public, they're sitting there saying, he didn't go to the podium. Is he an okay kid? You've already laid that to rest. He is an okay kid. He's fine. So Marvin Harrison Jr. sits there fine on that one. But Adunze, I can't imagine a GM or a coach who wouldn't want him on his team.
No, I like the kid on tape. He really made a jump, but I even love him more from what he did at the combine. So the combine does matter.
Rick, write me a better Hallmark ending script than you and Roma Dunze walking down the beach together as the sun sets over the ocean.
You can't. I can't even compete with that. It's because we had, like in the Hallmark movies, we'll talk about it later, about the last 20 minutes before it ends, there's something that's going to hit the fan and it's all going to go apart. And then all of a sudden you got Roma Dunze coming in doing the 3-cone for 62 times after everybody has left. And then that's
oh my gosh, unbelievable
defining moment of a Hallmark movie.
All right, you're on the clock.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting teared up too.
You guys are like I told Charles at the set last week, Rick. This is the first sign of a serial killer. Someone who loves Hallmark movies as much as you two guys. All right, Rick, you're up. Tennessee Titans. Look, you just talked up Roma Dunze, but you got every offensive lineman there, and Will Levis took a beating last year.
Yep. No, this is you can look at potentially going Roma Dunze here, but I have to go with Joe Alt. I thought he checked every box. It was him and Fashanu going back and forth with me. Fashanu got hurt, and Alt took advantage of that opportunity. Looked really smooth in the drills. Checked every box athletically. I think this guy is a Pro Bowler all the way. First day you draft him, you're putting him at starting left tackle. In order for Will Levis to have a chance, they're going to have to protect better. We'll be able to get some weapons around him later in the draft. So I'm going with Joe Alt here.
All right, this feels like it falls right into place for you, Charles. Atlanta's on the clock. They need a quarterback. Yeah. Now, we'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins because it's unclear where his future may lie, but wherever it ends up, he's going to get double the Rick Spielman money that he got the first time around. What are you doing if you're the Falcons here at 8?
When's the last time either one of you thought about the Atlanta Falcons pass rush off the edge, save the one season of Vic Beasley?
Right?
We're going back to John Abraham, it feels like, right? They tried it with Tag McKinley. That doesn't work. Folks, my kingdom for an edge rusher. Give me Dallas Turner from Alabama right now. Just put him out there and call it a day.
Well, that makes Rick very happy, doesn't it, Rick?
Yeah, I love that pick. Yeah, they need an edge rusher. Bud Dupree was a rental for a year. They have a good, once they get the quarterback set, they have a good defense. They have weapons on the offense. to me, and Raheem Morris who I have the utmost respect for Raheem. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job as a head coach there, and putting Zach Robinson as offensive coordinator. I think Coach Lake came in as his defensive coordinator, but Raheem is going to have his input on the defense. So this is a team that I think should be the favorite in the NFC South next year.
So, Charles, you're the great historian of perhaps anyone in media when it comes to NFL. Let's see if you know this one here. Raheem Morris's first year as a head coach of Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2009. You know who he drafted?
That would have been, was that Josh Freeman here?
Josh Freeman. So I'm going to ask you, are you considering the quarterback here?
Considering it, but not likely, because I think as this draft goes, the quarterback won't be there.
Oh, okay.
All right. But definitely considering it, because that's the only reason they didn't win the division last year. I mean, that's the only reason they didn't win it. But I'm thinking here, I'm feeling like it's a Kirk Cousins type of a move. He's my guy. I wait on that a little bit, and I shore up this defense and continue going. That's just kind of where I am at this moment.
I'm going in that direction too. Rick, if Kirk Cousins is the quarterback for the Falcons, they're the favorites, prohibitive favorites to win that division.
Yeah, because I want to think he's going to fit perfectly in that scheme with Zach Robinson and that McVay, and you see how he elevated his game with Kevin O'Connell, all that Shanahan tree. That's a perfect fit for him, especially with all those young weapons down there.
Yeah. All right. The Bears are back on the clock here at 9. Rick did us a huge favor. He drafted Caleb Williams. And I guess they fired you after you drafted him, Rick, and hired me to make the 9th pick. So you must have done something bad in the last 7 picks. I could go edge rush here. We've talked a lot about that in recent weeks. But, man, Chris Beatty's a new wide receivers coach there. He did a great job with the Chargers. And I'm guessing he would love to get his hands on someone like the guy we've been talking about the last 20 minutes, Rome Odunze. So Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze. Let's go with the Chicago Bears. You okay with that, Charles?
I'm more than okay with it. And let me just ask you both very quickly on this one. Have you met a Bears fan yet that has not said, give me Caleb Williams and one of those top receivers and we're good? That's exactly where it's all gone. Like, I know you don't draft for the fans, but I'm bringing them into this one. You draft Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. Oh, my goodness. They're going to be dancing in the streets. And by the way, you've made your team better.
Rick, they have the first pick, the 9th pick. They don't pick again until 75. You okay with getting a wide receiver, or do you want an edge rusher?
Yeah, no, we're moving on. I'll get an edge rusher in free agency.
Okay. All right. By the way, this team feels like it has to be a 10-win team. Eberflus is coming back. I would imagine he has a shortish leash, but you get your franchise quarterback, you get someone like Odunze, you're sort of out of excuses, right, Charles?
Yeah, I think so. And Rick, Eberflus has announced he's going to return as the play caller right on defense, correct? So as a GM, I have a feeling that in your meetings with him, you were probably encouraging him to stay in that direction, wouldn't you?
Yes. Yeah. And I've been in meetings with defensive coordinator / head coaches, and boy, do they have an influence on trying to go to the defensive side of the ball during the draft. But he also knows
Who could you be talking about?
He has a new offensive coordinator, and I think they want to get the weapons going. And if you're going with Caleb Williams, give him a chance. And you can imagine the Dunze with DJ Moore, and they're going to be they'll be tough. But the way they trended last year at the end of the season, they were playing very well once he took over the play calling on the defensive side of the ball and going out and getting Sweat and getting him extended. They're trending in the right direction, but I need to put points on the board, and I think these two are going to do it.
Hey, Charles, let me ask you this, because we haven't talked about Justin Fields, but clearly he's going to be somewhere else, it feels like. And if, for our purposes here, Kirk Cousins is in Atlanta, it sounds like the Steelers aren't interested. They want to bring Kenny Pickett back and don't want to give him any competition outside of a Mason Rudolph or Ryan Tannehill. Where's Justin Fields going to end up?
It's it's a great mystery right now, isn't it? Because you're trying to figure out where it all goes. But have you thought about Minnesota at all?
No.
Why?
I'm thinking about he stays for a year in Chicago.
Why would you do that?
That's an interesting one.
Because they don't get the value that they want to get for him. Maybe they only get a 3rd or 4th round pick. I know you probably get a 2nd, and it may be after the draft, who may still need a quarterback, or you keep them. And let's say a injury happens during training camp, a la Teddy Bridgewater.
Right.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you may be getting more than you can get this time of year. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility of, hey, well, he's making, 1.4, whatever the heck he's making. He's still on a rookie contract. Why not keep that asset, have a big boy conversation with him and Caleb, and let's move on till we get the value we want.
Hey, let me ask you this.
That's why he's a GM. That's our GM right there.
Well, let's hear what happens when this scenario plays out, Charles. So, Rick, and this is just me speculating, I don't know what's going to happen. When Justin's agent calls you and says on April 25th at 10:30 p.m. and says, look, this is not going to work out. He ain't going to be cooperative. How do you have that conversation?
Well, you're going to have that big board conversation, but I also know how much fine money is coming his way too. And he doesn't have a $200 million contract to absorb the fines, and the fines could be in excess of $50,000 if you're missing preseason games, and those add up pretty quickly. That's going to eat through that rookie contract real fast.
Okay,
hey, just come in, have a great year, prove it, because in the history out there, and Charles, you can correct me if I'm wrong, everybody that's sat, even Mahomes with Alex Smith, you can go through, the Green Bay model. Go back to when Drew Brees and they drafted Phillip Rivers, and Phillip had to sit. If you're able to do that, usually they have a lot of success. Now, I know the fans, the number one overall pick and all that other BS, but if you just want to take all that out of it and what's best for your football team, keep the guy if you're not getting the value you want. And then let's move on and go out there and compete. Then you can go get your big contract, because I'm not going to exercise a fifth-year option.
And even the ones who've been starters before and had to sit for a while. Now, like Jim Plunkett had to sit because he needed to heal up. Okay. Right. Doug Williams had to sit because he needed to heal up. Those guys have had a chance to come back and have that type of an impact. Steve Young had to sit behind Montana, but he was coming off of Tampa Bay in the USFL. He probably needed a little bit of time to heal up as well. So sometimes it works out pretty well. And one last one, Steve McNair. Remember, he sat coming right out of school behind Chris Chandler, and that worked out. I don't think, Ryan, we're saying that every single one works out, just like we're not saying that every guy who starts day one doesn't work out. But I do think that being able to sit and watch gives you a great opportunity, and probably a little bit better than taking the ball right from day one.
How about this historian, Charles? Who did Palmer sat behind Kitna, right?
Yes, an entire season, never took a snap.
Yes.
Oh, now you up your game when we have a guest on, Rick. You act like you don't understand half the things I'm saying during the regular show. That's interesting. All right, Rick, you're the Jets, and we've heard rumors going back to the Senior Bowl that Joe Douglas loves Tully Fuaga, who we love as well. He was a great young man to talk to. But Olu Fashanu is still out there, and you can go.
Moving on. Just take Fashanu, and I get my left tackle solved, because if I don't keep Aaron Rodgers upright, he's going to not last very long at that age, coming off that Achilles, and it solves your left tackle. They have to address their offensive line. I can't believe this kid's sitting here. It's like a 10-second conversation. The hardest part of getting it up to the podium is make sure you spell his name right. And then as you're sitting there writing it, make sure and then turn it in. But this is a no-brainer for me.
Let me ask you this, and I just found I saw this today, and I didn't notice it at the time. His hands are smaller than 9 inches. Do you care about that as an offensive tackle?
No, I'm going to put big gloves on him.
Okay. Problem solved. He's got an answer for everything, Charles. All right, we're going to take another quick break, and then we are going to rip through these things, so we can't have Charles here all day. He's got things to do. Quick break after this, and then Charles will be picking for the Minnesota Vikings right after this.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Charles, you are the new, improved, more handsome version of Rick Spielman making this pick for the Minnesota Vikings. I had to get that in. We're assuming sort of that Kirk Cousins is in Atlanta. Justin Fields, maybe he stays put. So that means they need a quarterback here. And there's some names available, or you can go in another direction if you want to address the defense, for example. What are you going to do, Charles?
Because so far we've taken the reported top 3 off the board, but we have not gone J.J. McCarthy yet, which would seem to be a nice little match there with Kevin O'Connell and the whole deal. I'm actually thinking that they're going to go in a different direction, though, because Brian Flores done a nice job there. And I think Danielle Hunter might be elsewhere. Give me Jared Verse, the edge rusher.
Oh, my gosh. Rick, what are you doing at quarterback?
I don't care. I'm not there anymore.
You like that, Charles? Man, all right, you gotta.
I agree with Charles. I mean, you got Davenport who is up. You got Daniil Hunter who is up, and then DJ Wanham is all up. They don't have any pass rushers. You need pass rushers, and Brian Flores' defense, and so you have to go with Verse. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Okay, look, I'm not going to ask you a bunch of questions because I'm picking for the Broncos next. I'm taking J.J. McCarthy. We did our social media game with him on set, Charles, and he ended up picking the state of Colorado as where he's going to end up. But I don't know if you had a chance to talk with him on the radio, Charles, but Rick, he was our number 2 interview all week after Jackson Powers Johnson, and he absolutely blew me away with his charisma and leadership. And he didn't have a lot on tape, but the things he did have flashed. So I got him going to Denver. I'll ask you this, Charles. Sean Payton doesn't have a history of rolling with young quarterbacks, so this might be a situation where, in fact, he does have to sit for a year. Does that sound more plausible than just throwing him out there in a Sean Payton offense?
It certainly does. And listen, Bo Nix, with the numbers he put up at Oregon in terms of how he threw the football, it seemed like one of those eye comparisons, like, oh, well, kind of Breeze-ish, those types of routes, what he was throwing. But this kid can do all of that. We keep talking about, oh, well, we didn't see this, we didn't see that. That's because they handed off 28 straight times against Penn State in the second half. We're not going to see all those things. This kid has the goods. I think it'd be a wonderful matchup with him, and Sean Payton will be working on that and also trying to get his joker back to go along with that as well, to get that guy to help him go along. But wouldn't be surprised at all if he's kind of got a bridge guy there, whether it's Stidham or someone else.
Rick, you're the Las Vegas Raiders, and so far we've had 10 offensive players off the board, just 2 defensive players, both taken by Charles and Thinley, edge rushers. If you're the Las Vegas Raiders, they need a quarterback too. What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to add a little spice to this because it's starting to bore me here with all the no-brainer picks.
All right.
I'm going to go with J.C. Latham, the right tackle from Alabama.
Love it. That's a good one.
They can go any direction. They go corner. They can go rusher. They can go inside guy. Mitchell, for example, would fit there. But I have to go with J.C. Latham. He can be the bookend for Colton Miller. Elo Manure is up. So they need offensive line help. You got 2 bookends, whoever your quarterback ends up being. So he's a mauler. He'll be a Raider that brings that physicality up front. To me, I'm going to go with J.C. Latham.
That's a great pick. I think he is offensive tackle 3 off the board. And it feels like, Charles, when you draft these offensive tackles, wide receivers too, as we've talked about them, you could go in any order and feel like you hit a home run.
Yeah, and you're going to feel great about it. Listen, I've talked to people who think Latham's the best tackle in this draft. And you notice how he put it out there. I can play left tackle too. Tackles can't help themselves, can they, Rick?
No.
If they're an defensive tackle, they want you to know you can play left tackle. Orlando Brown could have been a fixture in Baltimore his entire career at right tackle and been a Pro Bowler, all-pro every time. And he's like, I got to play left tackle. I got to do it. They all want to gravitate left. Doesn't mean it's always the right thing to do. No pun intended. But I think this kid is everything you said, and I think that's a big-time pick for them.
Yeah, it's just like every receiver that's over 6 foot think they should be playing in the NBA. So it's the same.
No doubt. I can hoop.
All right, Charles, you're up for the Saints. A ton of needs.
Rick, I'm just going to go ahead and get to it because, listen, Ryan's right. A lot of needs. There's whispers about Lattimore at the corner maybe not being there. So do you need another one? But, they've had people back there. And they may just have to do a little bit of a shift. Look, they got to solidify this offensive line. They swung and missed, and it appears so far on Trevor Penning. How's Fulaga still on the board? Give me Tully Fulaga, and let's rock and roll.
Oh, I love that. Are you okay not going defense here, Rick?
Yes. Yeah. Get them offensive line while they're up there.
I wonder what Charles will have to say for you to disagree with him, because I know I can't. When's the last time you agreed with me would be my question.
It's coming.
All right, the Colts are up. This is easy for me. I'm taking my cornerback 1. The guy I love the most in this draft at the position, but only by an inch because everything's so tight here. Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. I love the way he played in the season. Rick and I talked about him in the fall. We wanted to see him go up against elite competition. He balled out of the Senior Bowl, and then he put up the crazy numbers at the Combine. And Rick likes Terry and Arnold a hair more, but Rick, you're okay if Quinion falls to this team and Terrion's off the board, you take him, right?
Yeah. Either or.
Okay. All All right, Seattle's up, Rick. 16th pick, middle of the first round. We're halfway there.
Mike McDonald, new head coach, defensive background. They need help on the defensive line. To me, my favorite guy on the defensive interior, Brian Murphy II. They didn't franchise Leonard Williams. And Mario Edwards is up. So to me, this is a no-brainer. He fits perfectly, and he could be that Metabike, which they had in Baltimore.
Yeah, Byron Murphy II out of Texas. And Charles, we talked to him at the Combine, and I asked him, I said, which player gave you the most trouble among the interior offensive linemen during the 2023 season? He said, well, nobody blocked me, but Cooper Beebe did his best. He did a pretty good job.
I'm so glad he gave you guys the same answer, because how many times, Rick, have you gone around, and you too, Ryan, where you've heard this, and he told me, and then someone else said, well, he told me. I love there's some consistency there. But you're right. He also said the same thing, because I asked him about what's it like to see offensive linemen break the huddle, and you and Tavondre were standing there. And he said the first series, they came out fired up. At the end of the first series, they weren't quite as sure. That's what the answer he gave.
All right, Charles, you're from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They just franchised Josh Allen, I believe, the edge rusher. What does that do for your draft haul here at 17?
Well, we're not sure what's going to happen with Calvin Ridley, who came back last year and was supposed to give him a bunch of big plays. And there was some inconsistency there, as you guys saw. We'd have some big games, and we'd be like 3 games in a row where he wouldn't get 40 yards. So wide receiver is an obvious need to me to help out the young quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, to get him to the elite status. But guess what? Terrion Arnold's still sitting there. And every time I turn around, there's someone being either released or not there in Jacksonville anymore on the corner. I want Terrion Arnold. Give him to me right now.
Oh, man. I don't know if you had a chance to speak with him, but he is one of the most energetic, driven young men. And, of course, Rick had an opportunity to go down there and yell at all the Alabama kids, and he gave Terrion some tough love, and Terrion responded. Like, what did he tell you, Rick, after you yelled at him about the Tennessee game, what he was going to do?
Yeah, no, he said I gave him some big boy criticism on his game. And I respect him the most because he took some of the advice, at least that I gave him. I know Coach Saban sure had a major impact on that as well. But everything I said he needed to work on, he was able to do that, created more turnovers the back half of the season, more physical in the run game, and more consistent with his technique. But I know he didn't run fast, but neither did Brian Branch. I think this kid's going to be the top corner eventually out of this class.
Yeah, amazing young man. All right, the Bengals are up now at 18. I've had these mock drafts where Brock Bowers is hanging around here just because sometimes tight ends get pushed down, but that's a pipe dream at this point because Charles took him 5th to the Chargers. But I'm going to help Joe Burrow out. I'm going to get Troy Fautanu, who's still there. There's conversations about him moving inside. I'm leaving him outside if that's where because he's an incredible athlete. And Rick, my biggest regret from last week when we didn't get a chance to talk to Troy, but we did talk to Roma Dunze. I can't believe I forgot to bring up what he thought about Troy Fautanu wearing shorts. That's the one thing that fired him up so much, Charles, that on game day, his pads
stand these offensive linemen that just wear thigh boards and they have nothing after that. There's nothing over their knees, nothing. It's like they're like DBs or something. I mean, they cut right mid-thigh. He's playing in games. I was like, this isn't, like out of practice where it's shoulder pads and shorts, but it just drove me crazy, but he's a heck of a football player. I just like offensive linemen that actually wear pants to play.
Listen, I don't disagree with that. And I'm surprised most of them don't have the knee braces on just because they get all the friendly fire.
Right.
Where people roll into them all the time. I protect myself as much as possible. But I love the pick, Ryan, be able to put him out there and play the right side now with Orlando Brown on the left side. That's what they've been searching for anyway. And now, remember, years ago, it was Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. Well, they took the wide receiver that time. Yeah. That worked out well. They're able to franchise T. Higgins, get someone to keep Joe Burrow upright. And can we get Joe Burrow a preseason, please?
Jeez, yeah.
That's all we're asking. Not playing the games, but all of preseason practice without something going wrong so he's ready to go game 1.
Yeah, he's missed preseason the last 2 years in a row where he hasn't had any practice.
0. Yeah, just want to get him through. The only time he didn't miss it, I think, was his first year in the league, and then he got the knee injury. And then after that, we've had everything. We've had COVID. We've had the 2 injuries. You name it. We just want to get him that work because the first 3-4 games for the Bengals, always they kind of stumble out. They overcame it 2 years ago and made the playoffs. They tried it a second year, didn't quite get there. I want to see them functioning smoothly when we kick off the season.
Right. We got to keep him healthy. The Jamar Chase pick was the right pick, but he's got to be upright. All right, Rick, you're the Rams here at 19. So far, 13 offensive players, 5 defensive players. What are you going to do?
I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go, assuming that he passed their physical, Latu.
Nice.
Brian Murphy, who they drafted out of Tennessee, who had a great rookie year. Now you got 2 premier edge pass rushers, and I think if they can get after the quarterback even more consistently, that's what got him to the Super Bowl when they went out and got a Von Miller. I don't know this kid's Von Miller, but I know with the way their rookie class played last year and then adding him to the mix, and if he can get him going, they got 2 young pass rushers that will get him into and vault them probably farther into the playoffs than they went this year.
Hey, Charles, let me ask you this, because as I go through these mock drafts, it feels like this year more so than in previous years, you're going to be picks 19 to 32 and getting dudes that you could see going top 10, depending on how the teams feel about him. Some years you have guys like, I don't know if he's going to go top 40, right, and you got to take him at the bottom. But this class feels especially deep.
It certainly does. In fact, I said on air before we left Indianapolis that if you tally up the number of guys that, when you talk to people during the week, oh, he's a first rounder. Oh, he's a first rounder. He's a first rounder. The first round is now 64 picks. So to your point, Ryan, there are guys like that. There's just so many that are involved in the mix. And now I'm just thinking to myself, how well Les Snead and crew have done. We went from F those picks to now focusing on them doing the job they've been doing all along, and we didn't recognize it. They've always maximized rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But look at what they did last year. And now you've got a defensive front. If you take Latu and Byron Young, inside Aaron Donald and Kobe Turner, I'm in.
Yeah, Charles, Rick has his head down because he has been getting crushed over the Kobe Turner pick going back to the last fall when he wasn't a huge Kobe Turner
said he was
pick.
a pass rusher, but he can't play against the run. I mean, he's
Devo was ready for that one, Rick.
Yeah, everybody wants to put everybody in a Hall of Fame after one season. Let's relax and let's enjoy their careers, okay? And we'll make judgments at the end.
Tell him, Rick, you got to go through the lineup a couple times. We got to see the curveball first, right?
Yeah, Jesus.
He got hit 450 the first time through. Let's see how he does on the adjustments.
Well, Kobe Turner can hit the high heat. I'll tell you that. I don't know if he hit a curveball.
He had a heck of a rookie season, didn't he?
Yeah,
so
he did.
I'm eager to see that front continue to develop. I love the pick, Rick. Getting a lot. Just think about it. You get Latu at 19.
Yep.
At 19, an edge pass rusher, one of the premier guys. You're getting him at 19.
And thanks for correcting me. It was Young, not Murphy. I had Murphy because
we got Murphy out of it. We got all these Byrons.
I already took Murphy, so now I got Murphy and I got Latu. The one thing that I'll say why I think this draft class is so deep is because of that COVID year.
Yes.
So it pushed all these guys to have a extra year of eligibility, and less juniors have been coming out. Instead, they've been entering the transfer portal. And you see the number of juniors, and I don't know what the tally is this year yet. I didn't do that. But with less juniors coming out, with the NIL, guys staying in, guys going to transfer portal, and this COVID, I think this is the end of the COVID babies, as I called them. You got that extra year. That's why this is such, to me, one of the deepest classes I can remember.
All right, Charles, you're picking 20 for my Pittsburgh Steelers.
Last thing, COVID and NIL.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, you put those two together.
You got this.
I'm not leaving college,
right?
Unless you're telling me I'm a really high pick. Why would I? I can stay an extra year, make more money. Look, we got a quarterback at Georgia who has a Lamborghini NIL. Not bad.
Not bad. And
Rick, when I was in college, I got a Guinea. I didn't get the Lambo part.
You didn't get the Lambo part.
No, I just got the Guinea part.
Charles, do not laugh at that. That is the farthest thing from funny that Rick said. All right, Charles, you're picking from Pittsburgh Steelers.
All I got was the knee part. So, yeah.
All right. You're picking from Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. I'm picking at 21 for the Dolphins. I know who you should take for the Steelers, but as the Dolphins, I hope you don't take them. What are you going to do?
Okay, well, here's the deal. I could go back to tackle because I want to get Broderick Jones over to the left side. I could go back and get Amarius Mims. Only played 8 games, 774 snaps. We know that's one of the things there. But I know this. Centers have become a huge deal. Give me the big kid out of Oregon. Give me Jackson Powers. Let's go.
That's who I wanted.
Let's go.
He was a great kid to talk to, too. He was cracking jokes at Rick's expense, and we know how well he can play football. Rick, that was your favorite interview?
That was one of my favorites because he said what my dress was drip, whatever the heck.
I'm all dripped out.
That means good. It means good.
Except for my Skechers shoes. He didn't like my Skechers shoes.
Skechers.
He had all the buttons ready to go, Rick.
Hey, don't introduce him to Howie Long then, okay?
Yeah, that's right. The difference is that Howie's actually getting paid to wear Skechers.
How you getting paid to wear those?
That's how it works, Rick.
Yeah, well, they have great deals if you go to Costco. Every once in a while, they got the Skechers on sale for $29. When I hear it there, I'm the first one in line at Costco to get my Skechers.
Listen, I'm still the one who had to dig through the bin at the Grand Union in New Paltz, New York, to find those blue ones with the square toe. Because the square toe, I could kick the football because we were all straight on kickers. That soccer style stuff hadn't made it to New Paltz, New York quite yet.
Oh, okay. You were a kicker too?
Yeah, I can't. My coach John Ford actually found me. You're gonna love this, Rick. A square toe, left-footed kicking shoe.
Wow. Now
he found one, and I used that in my high school career.
Now, if you were really old school back in the day, the square toe kicking shoe, if you took a shoestring and tied it and put it up, pulled it up and tied it around your ankle,
it gave you a little more lift, Ryan, so you had that square toe. So then we could have emulated Fred Cox, Mark Mosley, Rick Danmeyer.
All right, Charles, I'm going to ask you this because this is when I got into my football.
Horning actually played with a square toe, and it had 176 points and set the record for points one season when he ran and kicked. There you go.
Did Mark Mosley, in fact, win the MVP one year? Is that right?
He did. In the strike year, right, Rick? I think it was 83. So we only played 9 games, and Mark Mosley was the MVP of the league for Washington.
Was it legal to use a shoestring to tie that top cleat to put your toe up and around your ankle?
If it was illegal, no one threw a flag because I saw it everywhere. And Mark Mosley wore like 12 pair of socks underneath his kicking shoe. He almost had a cast on.
Look at that. All right. You stole my guy, Charles. You took Jackson Powers Johnson. The Steelers. That's a layup for them, I feel like. 21, the Dolphins are on the board. They need interior offensive line help, but they're going to be restructuring that defense. They got rid of Xavier Howard, I believe. I think I remember that correctly.
Yes.
I'm going to take my guy who I've been talking about since the summer, Nate Wiggins.
Ooh.
Undersized. Are you at all concerned about the lack of girth in terms of the weight there, Charles? Because I think he played much tougher this year than he did in 2022.
I agree with that. And Emmanuel Forbes weighed about 105 pounds last year.
Yeah.
In the first round, I don't think we're as concerned about it anymore. It's a lot more space game.
Emmanuel Forbes struggled a little bit this year with the physicality of the game. So that's the only concern I have with Wiggins is I think he was $170 something. Manuel was 166 pounds. But sometimes as light at corners in contested situations versus the Adunzes of the world may have a little bit of tough time going up there and winning those contested situations.
I don't know. Nate's pretty tough, though. Do you think Nate's a better player coming out than Emmanuel Forbes? No? Yeah.
Who you talking to, me or Rick?
Either one of you, handsome devils. Charles, what do you think?
I actually liked Forbes better because of his playmaking ability, even though he was smaller.
What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, because remember we talked about him. He had unique ball skills. He was the one that went up and had a lot of ball production.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm taking him here, and he's going to prove you guys both wrong.
There you go.
Rick, you're Debo's Philadelphia Eagles here. Jason Kelsey retired. I think Debo has just gotten over the tears there. What are you going to do for the Eagles?
Yeah, I have to go with their secondary is a freaking mess. So Byard didn't work out. The best football player up there, I know he didn't. He was coming off an injury with the leg. Cooper DeJean is, to me, this is a no-brainer. He can play slot. He can play outside. He can play potentially end up being a safety, but too multifaceted not to help Philadelphia in the back end.
Debo, you okay with Cooper here?
A+ from Rick.
Yeah,
wow. Give you a plus, Rick.
Yeah, I don't get fired. I can do the podcast again.
That's your punishment. All right, Charles, you're the Houston Texans here, and after you make the pick, I'll tell you the guy that always seems to be available here. We'll see if you take him. What are you going to do if you're the Texans?
Well, listen, different ways to go, obviously, with them. But last year's Rookie of the Year for them out of Alabama was a rush end, right? Could he use a teammate? Because Jerry's up in years now, et cetera. How about the Chop Man? Chop Robinson, Penn State.
You know what's up, Charles. That's the guy that always seems to be hanging around here. Had a great combine. Rick, your only concern is that even though he weighed 254, he didn't play with quite that.
I tell you, I didn't know he was going to weigh 254, but all our ends that we had in Minnesota were in that 250 to 260 range. But I don't know if there's anyone with a quicker first step off the snap than Chop Robinson. And you talk about a guy that plays with his hair on fire. Mm-hmm. This guy goes, and he's fun to watch on tape. It's like when you're at a movie, I put the tape down. I went back, I went and got some popcorn, and I just wanted to watch extra games just because I would love the effort that I was seeing on tape.
So you stayed through for the next movie showing. You didn't even go out and buy another ticket. You just stayed through and said, go ahead and run it again.
Yeah, no, I had to do that because I know I wasn't going to be able to afford a movie for another 2 months. So
what are you talking about?
Out of your belly. Things are very tight down here with the Spielman family, just barely making it.
That's why you're wearing Skechers.
Hey, quick question for both of you. Penn State rush ends. Production numbers coming out don't match what we see in terms of combine, fat flashing on tape, etc. Because Owe came out his last year, had 0 sacks that year. This kid comes out, he has 4 sacks. And it surprised me because Adisa Isaac on the opposite side had more sacks, more tackles for loss. Is it just attention that's paid to these pass rushers? Because we know we love them, but the numbers, when you try and throw the numbers up, you would expect probably get close to double digits.
Rick, was it Tuli Puaga we talked to that said Adisa gave him a lot of trouble because of the speed rush? Was that who it was?
Yeah.
And then Olu we talked to and said no one made him better in practice than Chop. Yeah. But to your point, I feel like both those, at least Chop is a little more advanced in his journey than Adafe was, because Adafe, I think it just was relatively new to football. But what do you think, Rick?
Yeah, he was raw technically. I think Chop, I mean, they're all going to get better once they get to the NFL, but you can see Chop use his hands and his body control and his coordination with his hands and feet as a pass rusher. We used to love guys like this. And Andre Patterson, I don't know if you remember him, he was one of the best at taking guys like this and said, don't worry, I can't coach what he has, but I can coach where I can get him. And that's why we took a lot of those long athletic pass rushers, just because I knew what Andre Patterson was going to do with these guys once they got under his wing.
Yeah, and it's great to see Dre back on his feet too, isn't it, Rick? I
mean,
we'll see him make his journey back and coaching him up in New York. And Ryan, if you haven't met Andre Patterson, please do.
Best I've ever been around.
I'm putting it on the list. All right, next up, the Dallas Cowboys. And, man, I would love to get a tackle here, but Rick convinced me in our last conversation that you just take Tyler Smith and move him outside because Tyron Smith is on a new journey. I'm taking Graham Barton.
Why did you do that to me?
He played left tackle at Duke. He's kicking inside, so he's going to replace Tyler Smith, and they're just going to flip-flop and get to it.
Oh,
you don't
man.
Like that, Charles, huh? Did you want that guy?
I wanted him to play center for me.
Hey, can he play guard, Rick? You okay with that?
He can play center. He can play guard. He can play football.
Okay. That's your new saying. Let's put it on a T-shirt, Rick. All right, Rick, you're up. You're the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, boy. Debo, put the all up there because I'm either thinking corner or offensive. I know I'm never going to take a receiver in the first round.
No.
And then I love Mims's upside, but he got hurt again at the combine.
Just a hammy, though. Just a hammy.
I know. I'm just telling. It's adding up. Durability concerns. That's all I'm saying. But I think with their offensive line, they can go either with him, but they need definitely corner help as well.
Rakestraw.
Kool-Aid? Kool-Aid. I think Kool-Aid's going to fit in that system. With the new defensive coordinator, from Boston College.
Jeff
Halfley, who I think is an outstanding DB coach. I think Kool-Aid can play corner. He can play zone. He can play man. Very smooth athlete. I heard he knocked it out of the park. There were some concerns about his interviews when he was coming in, and everybody I talked to said he knocked it out of the park.
Oh, great. Good for him.
I got the same thing on him. And actually, I talked to him because you guys remember it was a surprise to everyone that he didn't work out. He didn't come with the intention of not working out. He came to work out. And in the physical, they found what they called a Jones fracture in his foot.
Yep.
I was able to actually speak with him, and nice young man. And you could see the pain in his eyes because, he came to go to work. He came to compete. And you guys know that Kool-Aid has been kind of the guy at Alabama for the last 2-3 years. But all of a sudden, here's Terry and Arnold. And he's not unhappy about Arnold's success, but he's a competitor. And all of a sudden, I'm Kool-Aid and I'm not number one. Well, we didn't even discuss that. I just asked him how he was doing and all. And he said, I worked out like yesterday. And then I found this out. I've been working out the entire time. From what I understand, there's a good chance it'll heal pretty quickly. And they actually think he'll compete on his pro day.
That's crazy. And not to go down a different rabbit hole, I know we're running out of time. And Charles, you got way more important things to do to talk to me. And
I think I'm having way more fun doing this.
But this is a thing, and I said this on a couple of the shows I've been on, is that when the guys come in for physicals, I've seen it where they've saved guys that had heart conditions that they didn't know they had, and were able to get to the right specialist just so it wasn't a concern. I'm not going to mention his name, but we found a player that did the physical that had leukemia maybe about 8 years ago that actually probably ended up saving his life because he went through the physical. So the guys that don't do the physicals, again, that's a whole nother topic that just irritates the heck out of me. Because who says that if I'm number 9 like last year and Bryce Young says, well, I'm not doing a physical with the Carolina Panthers, they're number 9. They moved up to number 1. So You never know in this business. So just do what you're asked to do. I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. But physicals, to say some of the things that come out of these physicals, this was something minor, but I've seen some major things over 34 years of the combine that have really saved some of these kids' lives.
Charles, the lesson there, do what you're asked to do. That's what I do what Rick asked me to do, and he still yells at me. All right,
Hey, I'm taking the physical because I want to make sure I still got some time left.
Fair enough. It's a free physical, too. You ain't got to pay for it. All right, Charles, you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got Baker. You got Mike Evans. You got Antoine Winfield Jr. What are you going to do now?
Look,
sorry to interrupt you. We don't have Baker yet, right? But he's coming.
Yeah, but we expect him to be there, especially with Mike Evans signing now, right? That's kind of the last piece fall in place. But listen, I need a center. Ryan Jensen was my pivot on that Super Bowl team. And him not being there last year, Hainsby had to come in and play, and it kind of juggled their offensive line. And I'm sitting there with a Zach Frazier out of West Virginia who I can plug and play right now. But I don't know how I turned down Ennis Rakestraw because I'm not sure what I'm getting on the corner. And I love Ennis Rakestraw because, as Mike Tomlin is fond of saying, he is not unwilling to engage.
Yeah, man, we talked to him too, and we liked him before, and we liked him even more, Rick, I believe, after. Do you care about the 170 and change weight?
No, because I know he plays bigger, and he is a tone setter, and it's hard to find corners that are tone setters. He played, his physicality reminded me of Witherspoon when he came out of Illinois. That's who I thought he was on the way he hits.
And that's big time praise there because, boy, did Witherspoon make an impact coming in, huh? My goodness.
So this is best case scenario here for my Arizona Cardinals.
There you go.
They took Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. I can't believe this young man is still here, Rick. I'm taking Amarius Mims all day long, moving Paris back to the left. Let's go.
Well, you left me with a great scenario with Buffalo.
So you're picking Buffalo at 28.
Yes. And I can't. One of my favorite guys under the radar who's now becoming on the radar. How can you not go with the receiver here?
Yep.
So this is a no-brainer to me. I have to go with Brian Thomas Jr. I can't turn down that speed, that red zone, what I've seen him do in the Florida game. I think he had 3 touchdowns, which was an incredible game against Ole Miss. This guy has so much upside. He's just untapped potential, but the way he worked out, the way he ran, this guy's got future star written all over him. And I think he'll eventually be, when Diggs phases out, Buffalo's #1 receiver.
Charles, again, another example of a guy getting pushed so far down, you can't believe he's still there.
Stunning to me. Absolutely stunning because of everything Rick talked about. Just think he was wide receiver 2 at LSU. Would have been very few places outside of the University of Washington that he wouldn't have been wide receiver 1 everywhere else in the country. And the day that Xavier Worthy ran the 4.21, this kid ran 4.33 and we totally lost it. And he's 44 pounds heavier.
44.
Running and longer and leaner. And I did talk with Cortez Hankin, his head coach, his receivers coach LSU. He told me that he's almost photographic in terms of picking up offense. Because, Rick, you know what you're talking about with rep guys, right? You got to get them out in the field and rep them. He said that he can throw something up on the board on Monday and not work Brian Thomas in that spot all week long. And then in the game say, hey, can you go to and put him in a place he hadn't practiced all week? And he's got it. That's great. And when I hear that from a guy I trust, that's a big deal to me.
Yeah, and Debo, like he puts up, because I'm a rep guy for this podcast. I mean, I got to rep it. I can't. I'm not Brian Thomas Jr. by no means. So I just. But let me ask you this, Charles. Now that we're on this topic, LSU had 2 really good receivers in Chase and JJ, Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
How do these 2 compare to those 2?
Neighbors compares to Chase in terms of intensity. All right. Neighbors is just like, just raw that way. Right. And then with JJ, he's just so darn smooth in what he does. I love Brian Thomas, but he's not that. Like that, to me, he's not that. I think in a lot of ways, when I say we, the royal we all weren't part of it. How we missed on certain things with Jefferson to have him go, 22? He's another one that got pushed down a little bit on the whole thing. But I like Thomas much more as an outside the numbers guy than I do bring him inside.
Yeah, who drafted Justin Jefferson? Whatever happened to that guy, Rick?
Well, Charles wouldn't have called me before the draft. Who knows what the history would have been?
we know better than that.
You might have traded up for Debo's guy. Debo would be much happier right now. All right, 29. Charles, once again, I have a guy in mind for my Ravens at 30. What are you doing at 29 for Detroit?
Well, 29 with Detroit, my obvious thing is to give them some help. Well, not obvious. They love to play a physical brand of football. We know they love to beat you up front, okay? Maybe a guard for them at this point, with a guy who can play center, but you don't need the center because Ragnow is there, but he could be your future guy, and that's Zach Frazier. He can plug in and play for you at one of the guard spots. But defense. I keep thinking defense, and I don't know why this guy is down here. Well, I know why in some reasons, but let's go with Johnny Law at Illinois. Defensive tackle.
Oh, okay. Rick, how you like that for Detroit?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer because they need interior help and they need to get better on the defense. They need to play the run a little better. And this guy is, again, because of the depth of this class, everybody's like, I can't believe that guy is still sitting there. And I know he got hurt some, but played through it during the year, wasn't able to work out at the combine. But to me, this guy was very similar. And Charles, you can disagree with me. Reminded me a lot of when we drafted Sharif Floyd when he came out of Florida.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I've had people tell me that they don't think he plays as hard as they want him to play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hear that about a lot of defensive tackles coming out. It almost seems to be like a standard line people plug into their scouting reports because you're hauling around 3+ on each and every snap. That's a lot to haul around. So I like this kid a bunch. Ryan, I actually, in a mock draft I'm doing, I actually had him going to Baltimore.
Oh,
okay.
Let me follow up quickly on what,
because I know how Baltimore values those guys who play big, stout. Michael Pierce is there. We don't know what's going to happen with Matabike. They have that rotation that they like to use. So I had him thinking, boy, he seems like a Raven. But I know Detroit, what they're trying to do, he fits the bill there.
And wait, let me just, Charles, one more great point you made there is that those defensive linemen are plus 300 pounds. They don't rotate much in college. And these guys are not going to play 80 snaps a game. So, because I asked someone that question, I keep ripping these guys. Well, they're not running or playing hard all the time. Well, he goes, tell me if you're 300 plus pounds and you're chasing everybody all over the field and you're playing 80 snaps, that's almost impossible to do. So, when they come in, there's going to be a rotation. They're going to play 30, 40, snaps. That's a whole difference. So you got to be careful, especially on these big guys, on saying they don't play hard. But you also got to understand the circumstances why.
Yep, that's right. I was going to actually get you to make that point, Rick, because you talked about that last year. And the other thing, if Johnny Newton isn't playing as hard as he can, I don't want to know what that looks like when he actually is playing 100%, because he was hard to stop. All right. I would have taken Johnny Newton there, but I still feel pretty good about who I got at 30 because the Ravens are on the board. And Charles, this is another guy I can't believe is here, although I understand why. Darius Robinson, edge rusher out of Missouri. Let's go. He ran a 4.95. I do not care because he plays much twitchier than that. And we just talked about the lack of production from the edge rushers in recent drafts. Rick, you okay with Darius Robinson here?
Love him. Love him as a football player.
Awesome. All right, Rick, you're the 49ers, 31.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer. Guyton's sitting there staring at me in the face, and they need their right side of the offensive line, I think, needs to be upgraded. Guyton may not be initially ready, but this guy has tremendous upside. To me, it's a no-brainer to take Guyton as a right tackle.
All right, so Charles, you're 32. You're going to wrap up the mock draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know if you're considering Guyton here. I don't know if you're considering another offensive tackle, or in my mock draft, and I'll ask you the question that Rick asked me a few days ago. I had them taking Xavier Worthy, but would you consider someone like Ladd McConkey here? Because does he better fit what Andy Reid wants to do?
Listen, how about A.D. Mitchell?
A.D. Mitchell is still there.
I mean, we're considering all those guys there because you guys saw Patrick Mahomes adapted and started to play station-to-station football in a sense because that's what he had to do with his receiving core, play to his defense. I've said it before. I stand by it. He's played the best quarterback of his life the last half of this year and through the playoffs. I don't care what the numbers say. The spectacular numbers aren't what was the deal. He understood how to play quarterback, what to do in certain situations, take a sack rather than put the ball up for grabs. You name it, he did it all. But how about if he can get a flyer again? That's why Xavier Worthy fits there in a big way to get a guy who can take the top off and do those things. I love A.D. Mitchell, Keon Coleman, all those guys, but he doesn't have that flyer on the outside. I'm going to take a gamble right there and do that, although I will tell you, I was considering if Guyton was sitting there and left tackle kind of start things over because Donovan Smith had his share of issues this year, and they do a good job of keeping that offensive line intact. But I'm going Worthy. Give Patrick Mahomes a little taste of sugar because he did everything else, for the team for the last couple of years. Give him a little taste.
Rick, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey. Who are you taking at 32?
I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Mitchell just because of the size and the cold weather games that they play in. I always thought big, and I may be wrong on this. Charles, you can correct me. Ryan, please don't correct me because I won't listen anyway.
I know the rules.
Bigger receivers and more difficult weather decisions usually seem to end up playing better than some of the slighter guys.
I agree. A mock draft that I have going, Rick, I'm so glad you said that. I gave A.D. Mitchell to Buffalo for exactly the reason you stated. Cold weather games, you're going to start them probably in August in Buffalo.
Yeah. All right, listen, Charles, thank you for joining us. But before we get out of here, and I'm going to let you have first pick, and then, Rick, you're going to follow, and then, Charles, you can wrap it up. Give me your all-time favorite Hallmark movie, and then Rick, you can agree or disagree and give me what's number 2 on the list.
Oh, my goodness. My all-time favorite just happened this Christmas, Rick.
Oh, amen. What a Christmas miracle. What is it?
It was the one at the Biltmore.
Oh.
Absolutely love that. Christopher Palafa, Beth Joy Lenz starring in it. Is one of those period pieces that you kind of, you got to suspend belief as usual. A little magic with the whole thing. And all of a sudden she's transported back to this actor, Jack Houston, who's actually there. That's my newest favorite one. Although anytime Ryan Pavy's out there, I'm down with that. And I'm a big Taylor Cole and Ashley Williams fan as well.
You guys should do a Hallmark mock draft at some point. Rick, what's number 2 on the list?
Well, I love the actresses. Lacey Sherbert.
Yep.
My number one all time. Danica McKellar is also like right up there. So those two, anytime they're in a movie, I'm watching it. But there was one movie that really stuck out to me that really hit home, got me through the dark times when I got fired up in Minnesota.
Poor Ryan, he's dying over there.
Summer Villa, where I don't know if you remember this. This writer had block writer and this chef out of New York, a celebrity chef. They ended up sharing a villa together by accident
in France.
In France, yeah. She brought her daughter, and there was a lot of arguing and things going on.
That was Hillary Burton starring.
Hillary Burton, that's right.
Hillary Burton and Victor Webster.
Oh my gosh, this is insane.
That got me through the dark times of my life.
Oh my gosh, and then you end up with me. All right, we'll do 1 and 2. That was enough. I want to ask one last question, though. And Rick, I'll start with you. When's the last time you cried at a Hallmark movie?
I haven't. What I would say at the Combine when I saw Country Wedding.
Is that the Jesse Metcalf Autumn Reeser one?
Charles, do you get teary-eyed to these things too?
That one would get you misty because Jesse had to return to his home, and then you found out that he lost both parents.
Oh
yeah.
no!
It's just
in an accident, and he hadn't returned home since. And then you found out that he and Autumn Reeser had a mock wedding because she said, "I always want you to have family," and they were kids. And guess what, Ryan? Believe it or not, they reunited and got married at the end of this.
Tell me that's true.
No, I did not know it was going to happen. That's why I just held my breath. And I was up late one night at the Combine because it was on from 9 to 11. I go to bed at 9:30. But one of my all-time favorites as well.
So you stretched for that one.
I did. I had to come back and take a nap just so I can stay up to watch the 9 to 11 Hallmark movie.
And it's Ryan, the kicker was the boy that married them young was the son of a preacher.
Mm.
And he became a preacher. And then he married them at the end. The symmetry.
This has been an education, guys.
That's enough. I can't take it anymore.
Ryan, stop right there, Ryan. Just stop. We're good.
The lesson here is call your parents and tell them you love them because you never know. You never know. All right, that's it. That's a wrap for episode 131. I would imagine most people turned off about 5 minutes ago, but don't worry about it. I hope you enjoyed the mock draft. Charles, I cannot thank you enough for joining us and bringing up.
Thank you for having me. You guys are the best. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles.
This is great. All right. For Rick, for Charles, for Debo, thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to start talking about quarterbacks. So we'll do that next week. See you then.